Hello, I'm Penelope Mavor, and welcome back to Earth Converse podcast, where we explore our relationship and conversations with the earth, all in the hope of inspiring a deeper connection with ourselves, each other, and the earth that is our home. And today I've got Jonathan Stevens here, and he's part of the my Impact gang. I've interviewed Roy on on episode 8, Dave on 26, and now Jonathan, because I wanted to, talk to people that have had an impact on my life, literally. And Jonathan and we haven't spent a lot of time together, but we've done beautiful work in the Lakes District. And in fact, I interviewed JC, Jean-Claude Pierre, and that's where we first met Jonathan, working with them. And I just wanted to, Jonathan is a geographer, and he reckons geographers will save the world. But he's a leadership coach and facilitator. And what I wanted to do is get him to do a Lifelines exercise. We do this, we ask participants and leaders to do this, and it's always a really beautiful, tender, revealing, intimate moment, isn't it? It's because we ask them to go, okay, what are the significant moments in your life? And how it's informed how you are and how you and what lies ahead, really. And I asked Jonathan to do a Lifelines exercise about those moments, those significant moments where he feels he's deepened his connection with himself, others, and the earth. And he's done it. He's like a very good participant. So he's got his lifeline. So we're going to talk lifelines. How cool is that?
Nice to be here.
Yeah, super. So I guess we start with birth.
Well, crumbs, yes, it was really a revealing exercise to do this. So I was born in 1964 in Sheffield, and we lived near the edge of the Peak District. And I always remember in my early childhood, it was always really snowy in the wintertime, really cold. There was loads of snow. It was never an issue that there wouldn't be snow. I just remember that. And it's still now, I can look back and see myself, sledging down off the side of one of the edges or over the moors there. And that just was my first connection with the wild outdoors, I think, going to the Peak District. And it kind of built from there, really, to a first visit to the Lake District in the mid-70s. My dad dragged us all up Skiddaw, which I thought was Mount Everest. It was such a big mountain. It took all day to get all of us up there.
Were you moaning and grumping around? Yeah. And now,
no, I thought it was an enormous adventure. My brother and sister weren't too happy, but they're a bit younger, shorter legs. And I just remember that mountain is etched into my consciousness, that the amazing profile that you see from Keswick.
Yeah.
It's an abiding memory of the Lake District. And I always wanted to come back here. I live in Kendal in the South Lakes now. And I always thought, I want to be somewhere where there are mountains and where there is snow in the wintertime, because that's what I remember from childhood. And even in the lakes now, we're not getting so much snow anymore, but it's still a go-to for me.
Yeah, I love this idea of this mountain being really significant. Has it been significant, to you? Like, has it been?
Well, it's funny. I don't go back very often to Skiddaw. I mean, it's a great big lump for those people who know it, but it's in a really commanding position and has this incredible profile, this skyline. So for many people, it's if you think of the Lake District, you think of Skiddaw, or you think of the shape of Skiddaw, or you think of Helvellyn or Scafell. But there are places in the park that I will go to because they mean something. Like there's another hill a bit nearer Impact, actually, when I used to work there, called Wetherlam, which you can see as you look towards the Langdales. It's the one on the left. And that is a really special place. I had some great experiences with clients there. It's a quite remote, real feeling of being away from everything. You don't really see many people when you go up there. And I still am drawn to the park. I used to have this recurring dream that there's a peak in the middle of the Lake District that no one has discovered yet. And I'm going to be the first person to know of it. And I tell you, it's a bizarre dream, and I keep having it. There's this mountain somewhere in the middle of the park, a bit like, what's that mountain in Tibet, Mount Kailash, sacred mountain, that it's somewhere in there, it's hidden, and I'll find it.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love the symbolicness of that dream, though, and it's reassuring.
Huge amount of symbolism. It's obviously clearly it's a metaphor for something else, but I
Have you
do
explored that, what it could be, like in terms of dream work or anything like that?
to a degree. I mean, my wife Karen often laughs when we go away. She says that you always want to go somewhere where no one has been to. And we did a trip to Ladakh years ago, and we were sat in Leh in a tea house looking at the amazing mountains above the Indus River. And I thought, I want to be over there on that next range. And she said, why can't you be happy where you are? Why do you want to go somewhere else? I'm kind of driven to go to these new places, I think, or to be the first person there. For me, it's the
Yeah,
first time I've been, which I
yeah.
think is what I really want to be.
Mm.
But yeah, it is. I do feel drawn to places with mountains or with empty country. You know, I spend a lot of time looking at corners of the map that no one goes to. I was lucky in the 80s. I went to Greenland on an expedition, 1983,
Wow.
to the East Coast, and then it was quite difficult to go
Yeah.
as a tourist. So we went and we spent 3 months living in a hut in a little Inuit village called Angmasalik.
Who's we?
Oh, that was with the British Schools Exploring Society, as was back in the 80s. There were 10 of us living in a hut. We were doing a science survey for the Danish government, who looked after Greenland then. And I just bought these maps of the east coast of Greenland. And a map of the east coast of Greenland is all white with a little corner at the bottom which has land or sea. And I just thought, I framed that. I thought that's I want to be in the middle of that map. You know, go onto the ice sheet, go somewhere that's completely unknown to me personally. And when we did that whilst we were there, it was a formative experience. I was only 18 when we went.
What a beautiful,
Be tremendously self-reliant, looking after yourself. You know, we carried rifles because there are polar bears. There were no radios or phones. You were trusted to get on with things. Really was a peak experience, I think, going to those remote places and having to be self-reliant, I think, at the time.
But it also at that age of the man, it sounds even like a rite of passage or something, going into adulthood or that sort of lovely experience for a young man.
I think it was actually. You've hit the nail on the head. I think it was a rite of passage because I spoke to my parents once for about 3 minutes on a satellite phone whilst I was there, and I was away for 3 months, and they had no idea where I was, and that wasn't an issue. Just got on with it, and we used to meet people in the villages. There's a few Inuit villages up and down the coast. They couldn't believe we were teenagers because you don't do that when you're a child. You stay with the family. You follow your dad who's a hunter or whatever, and you learn your trade until you're responsible and prove you can do it. Whereas here we are, English teenagers with weapons, skiing up and down the East Coast, doing science surveys. So it was a great thing, and kind of fostered an interest in doing more of that, and that's how I got involved with the RGS eventually.
The Royal Geographic Society.
Yes, that's right. I joined the RGS in 1988. So it's Nigel Windsor, who I think he was the deputy director at the time. He proposed me for fellowship, and I've stayed involved with the society ever since, really. And I'm the current chair of the region in this part of the world. So just drawn to wild places or to people who organise activity in these amazing locations. It's always been a passion.
And what does it evoke in you? These wild, sort of empty, unknown places, or is it the?
Well, I thought a bit about this before we spoke. It's the notion that there's somewhere remote that might not yet be spoilt, or there's somewhere where people might be living a traditional way of life, or there's somewhere that has been, in spite of everything else that's going on in the world, has survived largely intact. Now, of course, that's a complete delusion, because nowhere in the world is unspoiled, and nowhere, but very few places, maybe the ocean floor, haven't had at least some indirect connection with people like you and me. And I don't think there are very many uncontacted societies anymore, maybe in the Amazon possibly, but it's still a notion of it's less developed. It's out of the way. It's off the beaten track. There's a sense of newness, freshness about it. I was lucky. I took a some time out in the 90s. I went into the Hindu Kush and the Karakoram on a big trip, part of which was solo.
Oh,
Went on an organised trek to K2 base camp, and then a small group of us went off, and then I went off by myself through the Hindu Kush. And every valley was different. Every valley, people spoke a different language. It was quite remote, and I stayed in one village where there's no road into the village. It was a 3-hour walk from the nearest road head, and it was a reasonably traditional society. I mean, they all knew about the outside world, but it was just, there seemed to be a different pace of life and a stronger sense of community. And I was, as an English speaker, I was welcomed in, like a prodigal son. People didn't know me from Adam, but took me in, and I lived with them for a while and had a fantastic experience. And so there's something, maybe it's that these places are less adulterated. It's a bit arrogant, that, because by going there, I'm adulterating them, aren't I? But
no, but there's something, when you say that, because, and I also think about actually Jim Marsden, who I interviewed, he talked about sort of not sort of feeling right. And he actually took himself off to the Karakorams, to sort of, just be amongst that and walk and in these incredible landscapes and what that brought to him. But when you talk about that, I do think about sort of the outer and the inner. So your own, where the part of you is pure and or that integrity you're looking, or something that sort of evokes, or the unexplored part of you. I'm going all metaphorical and soulful, but
yes. Well, I wonder. I mean,
the wild, remote,
yes, all of those things.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm looking for something that I don't have intrinsically. I don't know. It doesn't exist unless I go and find it.
Yeah.
But when I went to the Hindu Kush, again, that was a long trip, and I was off the beaten track. And I remember trying to phone home once in a village, and there was a guy in a little hut, and he had a wind-up telephone. And I thought, let's see if we can get this to work. And of course, it didn't. And I thought, why am I phoning home? I want to be here. I quite like this sense of it's just me. Yeah. I'm going to have to get on with this. But when I came back, I had the spur for going there was I had a bad breakup, and I thought, I don't know if I want to stay working in this profession, and I'll just go and do this trip. And someone said to me when I came back, so did you find yourself then?
Yeah.
As if somehow I'd gone off to do that. And I thought, well, no, I didn't. But I've had some amazing experiences. It was a fantastic time. It's completely broadened my horizons. So maybe I know myself a bit better, but still sorted out.
Yeah, lovely reset. And it's interesting, isn't it, when we're in that pain or whatever, that takes us off to, another, literally another emotional or physical landscape.
Oh, yeah. And what was, it was Teddy Roosevelt used to, his frenetic lifestyle was well known, wasn't it, when he was president? But people used to say he had lots of demons, but he just used to outrun them. He'd always be ahead of them. He lived his life at 100 miles an hour, And I thought, what a great metaphor that is for living your life. There's all kinds of baggage, but if you keep running, you can keep ahead of it. When you stop, that you're in trouble. Anyway,
how many demons are you running from?
Yes, well, many, I'm sure, but
yeah. So you're back. Yeah. So you're back after that incredible experience on your lifeline. Where are we on the lifeline?
Well, we kind of jumped around a bit from the 60s to the 90s there, but in 1976, I met Sir David Attenborough at my school. He came to my school to do a tour.
Really?
I think it was when Life on Earth was being broadcast,
Wow.
the series that kind of made him. And I was completely starstruck. I still am, actually. Still knocking out of the park even now, isn't he? And I remember writing to him. I've still got the letter. He wrote back. I said, I want to be like you. What do I have to do?
Oh, Jonathan.
And he wrote back and said, well, I'm nothing special, because many people assume he's a naturalist or a zoologist, and he's not. He's just really good on camera. And I read a profile in The Guardian the other day. Look, I'm not a naturalist. People think I am, but I do know I've had a lot of exposure to this, and I'm passionate about it, and I like to tell a good story. Yeah. And he does that so well.
Yeah.
And so he was a bit of a motivator. And throughout my academic and professional career, I've been trying to get back to that point. and of course, it's, it's,
What is that point? Sorry.
well,
Like,
exactly.
if you, in terms of articulating that.
Well, being like him, being a
Yeah.
wildlife broadcaster, which is it's cloud cuckoo. I mean, there are
No.
a few people who can do that, do it well. Paul Rose is another inspiration. He does it well,
Yeah.
but he came to it late and indirectly, as well as he would attest. What I've found, I've found myself doing work that allows me to indulge my interests. Maybe I don't indulge my interest in the work that I do, but a good example. When I was at Impact, I became chair of Cumbria Woodlands, which was an advisory business owned by Cumbria County Council at the time, but it's now part of the Lake District National Park, helping people who own ancient woodlands get them into more and better management for biodiversity,
Wonderful.
rural employment, recreation, all the right reasons. And Dave Williams, who owns Impact, let me do that in my work time. So I got paid to do it. It was a part-time job. It was just immensely rewarding, and taught me a lot actually about what life is like for clients that I work with. I often get brought in to work with chief execs or chairmans or boards. And here I was being one of those people, recognizing all the challenges that they're faced, leading a committee of people, helping to lead an organization and or oversee an organization. So that was good. And
Wonderful.
Also in the 90s, because I'd been with the RGS for a couple of years, when they put out a call for people to create a regional network so that the society's programs, there was potential for outreach. I volunteered to start the Northwest region. This is back before the internet and back before mobile phones, and we started from scratch, a small committee, and it's 28 years later, it's still functioning. And we have a massive program of events, a really incredible group of people who oversee the society's outreach in Cumbria and North Lancashire. Everything's online at the moment, but we have lectures, we have talks, we have field visits, and we will go back to field visits when we can. We have big symposia. We run a couple of conferences on the future of the uplands after Brexit. It's a big issue in terms of climate and landscape and World Heritage status here. We convene a broad church of interest groups, from people who like to hear about travelling to remote places to people who are passionate about geography, and its capacity to help explain the world and help us understand it and make it accessible. A good friend Nigel Windsor says that it doesn't matter what the academic subject is, it's a letter in the alphabet of geography. And I thought, that is exactly it. So that's when he said that, he came to one of our dinners at Myriad Hotel in Windermere, and he said that it's a universal discipline. I'm biased, I'm a geographer. So I studied at university in Liverpool in the 80s, and I thought it is a universal, all-encompassing discipline, and it matters. And I think that's why having that engagement has continued to foster my interest in this part of the world, in remote places, in climate change, in
restoration,
the works, rewilding, you name it.
Well, I did study geography, and I like because it helps us understand the interrelationship of things, doesn't it? Yeah. It is a generalist subject, which I do think we need that in order to be able to see the whole biodiversity and the different ways of what people will want to access the lakes for, or, there's all different reasons, from social, physical, mental health to rewilding and biodiversity. And so,
completely. Absolutely. I mean, that's a brilliant way of sort of referencing it, because I think for me, it's about people and place geography. And if to give it the broadest of brushes, and anything goes within that space, whether you were looking at the effect of glasses on the Lake District, which was one of the things that when I was at university, I first got to rekindle my interest in coming here, looking at landscape, or whether it's the impact of sheep farming on the uplands in a time of climate change, when actually if we can restore the uplands and improve the carbon capture and carbon storage capacity of what is effectively, it's a huge upland plateau wilderness area, wouldn't that be a great thing? But then there's a proud heritage, and there are generations of farmers going back hundreds of years, and they've shaped the landscape that people enjoy, and personally I think there could be a lot more trees, but that's not incompatible with it being a tourist destination.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that sense of people and place, and I think that's what influenced my choice of career as well. So got an interest in the Lake District, got a passion for geography, thought I want to live there. So how can I live there and work? Or what's going to help me live there? What work can I do? And that's when I got involved with the Outward Bound Trust in the late 80s. Well, the first thing was Braithy Hall had an expeditions group, and I thought, here's a chance to start volunteering. And then I got a job with Outward Bound. I spent 5 years at the Ullswater Centre near Penrith, and taking people, often young people, into the outdoors, having profound personal development experiences, life-changing for some, and then thinking, well, actually, there's an opportunity to do this with people in organisations doing the same thing, taking managers into the outdoors, taking real teams into wild places, and just seeing how being removed from the day-to-day in a wild and apparently wild place, albeit a heavily grazed one, an apparently wild place that might be quite uplifting or spiritually different, just liberating the conversation in groups, helping people get in touch with stuff that maybe they've never talked about, helping people go off the grid, bit of digital detox, no phone, no watch, here's a notebook, see you in 10 hours, go and sit somewhere nice and write a letter to yourself. Amazing transformational experiences for people in organizations by being in this special place. And that's, I thought it's a dream job really, because I'm living somewhere I want to live with a lot of friends, and I met my wife Karen at Impact, and doing interesting work with a lot of people from all kinds of sectors in this remarkable outdoor classroom.
It is, yeah.
And
it's like a whole, it's really holistic, isn't it? And
oh yeah,
so many ways. Literally your own connection with yourself, and Karen, the family, the impact, the community, and the bigger world.
Yeah. So I think that's. I'm an independent now, but for the last 4 years, but I still find that outdoor space, it's a great one to go with people. It's whether as a family or with clients. I mean, lockdown's been, I feel a bit bereft really that's not an opportunity at the moment. But it doesn't stop me going into the park where we live. 5 minutes you can be in the park, you can walk from home, and that's been it's kept me sane during lockdown. Actually, is having that chance to go into a beautiful place quite close to home that maybe I didn't know that well.
Yeah.
Fully explored.
Unexplored wildness right outside your door.
Oh, completely. Yeah, completely. I remember I went into town for a coffee the other day, and walking along by the side of the river in Kendal, there were 2 otters fishing. And I thought I would have never seen this when I was in my normal life. I'd be off somewhere, and in the middle of Kendal are 2 otters.
Oh man.
Or a peregrine took a pigeon out from just near the office window at the back of the house here in the middle of Kendal. I thought, this is incredible. So I've still found myself getting out for that quiet space, that sort of sense of connection with the land, and what for me feel like a lot of nature. Certainly this close to the park anyway.
Well, it is the wild, it really is a beautiful sense of wildness there. And in terms of, working with, do you, if you compared actually working with leaders in a sort of I don't know, hotel room versus the outdoors, you've noticed the difference, yes?
Well, yes, and I think it's also a bit of it can be a cop out as well to say, well, actually, I've just done an online session and it didn't really deliver because we're not in the room. We're not in the room. If we were in the room, it would be all different. In fact, if we were in the room and then we could go outside, it
Yeah.
would be, I mean, that's a nice to have. And yes, it probably would be, but it's not possible. So what are you going to do? So that's been quite a steep learning curve to think you can't use the fact that you can't be together as an excuse. Well, you can, you won't have any work, but so finding a way to get that intimacy, that connection. One of the things that I got inspired by at Outward Bound is Kurt Hahn, who founded Outward Bound, the German educator. And he said, we're all better than we know.
Yeah.
We're all better than we know. And if only we
What
could
a great way, sort of, just so simply said.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
We've got to be brought to realize this, I think is the other half of the quote. And once that happens, we won't settle for anything less. And so you've got to, for me to do good work, I've got to somehow create an opportunity for people that I'm working with currently online in cyberspace to recognize that they can become better versions of themselves, or they can get out of their own way. And often that's just about treating them as if we're outside, having a walk and talk, asking them a lot of open, like you're doing with me, a lot of open questions, getting them to explore stuff, reflect back on things, but just in a way that's, there are less distractions. It's not as good as being with them in the outdoors, but you can still do it, I think. And that's my challenge this year, is to achieve that level of connection with people, and to do the right kind of work, so that they're doing it, not me. I'm just going along for the ride, but they're becoming better versions of themselves, or they're getting out of their own way. And I think that's, well, you do this for a living as well. You can tell when it's happened. You can see the light go on, can't you? And I think that's rewarding. And I would love to do that, be doing that again with people outside, but we'll see. I'm sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, just interviewed Bill Plotkin, and he talked, and in his book, he details about Carl Jung's journey. And he said he didn't go out to nature. Actually, he did a deep dive into his own psyche, in his office, while the kids were in bed, sort of thing. I mean, that's whatever it takes. And I also think that whatever is necessary, there's somebody asked me about, what is it, rapid eye movement therapy? What about that? She'd heard that, or quantum healing, or da da da. And I was like, I always think whatever works. If it came into your sort of consciousness, it may be the right thing for you, and it will work regardless.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. And it's sort of like, yes, a one-to-one with Jonathan, or a one-to-one with Penelope. It may be just the right thing at the right time, and it will work. But for some, it won't, because that you're not ready, or it's just a different thing. But
no, I think you're right, and I'm clearly biased, and you and I have done some great work. And I remember that we took that team from a big tech into the outdoors, didn't we? And they had no phones, they were off the grid, and they had to talk to each other, and they had to cook a meal together and sleep in a mountain hut, and walk under the stars back to the pickup point. And just seeing the sort of scales fall away, and then realize that actually, we do have to talk to each other. We do have to have a connection if we're going to have a good working relationship in our business. And so I'm a bit biased about that space, but anything that triggers that sort of reflection and self-assessment, or even self-audit, gets my vote, whether it's outside or go on a retreat and for a week, and don't leave your room. If it helps you get there, then that's fine.
Yeah. And speaking of self-reflection, where are we at with the lifelines? Because I think a near-death experience would sort of be a significant moment.
You were going to bring that up, weren't you? So after I came out from when I was in Pakistan, in the Hindu Kush, I had a couple of sort of health episodes where I felt quite strange and very sort of weak and enfeebled. I put that down to the altitude and the diet, and not having enough food with me, actually. But I got checked when I came back, and cut a long story short, about 10 years later, I had to have heart surgery. And it was something, this is to fix a thing that I was born with. It was a valve, mitral valve wasn't working properly, which accounted for the extreme breathlessness at altitude. I'd like to think, not that I wasn't fit. And,
did you know you had it before this?
I knew I had a murmur, had a heart murmur, but when you're young, you tend to be a bit in denial about these things. They say when I'm a pensioner, you might have to have some surgery, and so I forgot about it. And I'd have regular checkups, but anyway, I was doing a lot of work. I got a bit worn down, doing a lot of work in the wintertime outside with groups, got sick, got worse, and ended up with endocarditis, which is an infection of the heart valve, which is quite a difficult thing to treat. And for a long time, I was just really suffering and didn't know what was wrong with me. It's Karen that worked it out, actually. The doctor just said, oh, you've just got a chest infection. So I ended up having emergency surgery, spent 3 months in hospital on a drip, had a new valve put in, lost a lot of weight, took 5 months off work. It was quite a close run thing, I think. I'm still in denial about it, but it just killed a lot of people, this condition. But I got fixed, and I was convinced I would get better. But when I came out of hospital, I decided I wanted to get back to where I'd been. I wanted to get back to feeling comfortable in the outdoors, in the mountains, by being self-reliant. And in hospital, I remember when I came out of surgery, I had to have 2 people would help me to walk from the bed to the bathroom. That's how debilitated I'd become.
So humbling, like to be in part of your identity. I'm a fit young guy and I can do anything. And then the surrender to that.
It was really quite traumatizing. I was in a ward with a lot of old people who were very ill, who had serious heart issues because they were, approaching their end of their lives. And they were saying, what are you doing in here? Yeah. What are you doing in here? You're a young lad. What are you doing in here? As if somehow I'd done something wrong. And that took a lot of getting used to. But I thought, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here as soon as I can and get back to fitness. And I was lucky. Every year I've set myself a big challenge. So 10 months after coming out of hospital, I did the Fred Whitten bike ride, which is all the peaks and all the passes in the Lake District with a friend.
Wow.
I know, it just took me a long time, but I did it. and it was more to convince myself I was okay, I think. And I did that was with a good friend Tim Luke, and then I went to Norway and did the Birkebeiner ski race with Paul Rose the next year, and then every subsequent year I've tried to do something a bit challenging or demanding, almost to prove to myself that I'm okay. And now I've forgotten that I've had the surgery.
Wow.
People I haven't seen for a long time say, "Oh, how are you?" I said, "Well, I'm fine." Why are you asking?
Why would you ask? But wow, this is so it's transformation. Like in terms of when you were about the sense of being close to death, like in that in the hospital, was it in that sort of recovery process? You sound like you really, I'm going to get out of here, but was it really?
I think that to be honest, I think I was in denial because I was surrounded by a lot of people. I mean, there were people who would die on the ward. They would be in empty bed in the morning. That was a bit disturbing. There were people who the dementia ward had been closed in the hospital, so a lot of geriatric patients were being put in the main ward, and there were people having tremendous flashbacks. There was a guy who'd been in the war, he'd been in the tank, and he was having nightmares. And there was a farmer who thought he was on a farm. He was rounding sheep up so it was quite a disturbing place to be. Yeah. And part of my I'm going to get better was I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
But also I did feel I got really good care. I won't hear anyone say a bad thing about the NHS.
No.
They are brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And
incredible institution.
It just kept that kept me going, really. And I've got a lot of friends come and see me, and Karen was fantastic. She had to deal with all of the collateral damage of me being in hospital. That must have been tough for her. My daughter had a really tough time to begin with because she was quite young. She thought parents go away, they don't come back. But I thought stuff it, I'm going to get over this. And I remember my first memory after I came out of the surgery was being in the ICU. I remember, I think I was able to open my eyes briefly, and I was all wired up to a ventilator and everything. And Karen walked in. I put both thumbs up. I said, I couldn't speak, but I said, I told you I was going to get through this. So I have that. Maybe I'm in denial, but I do feel that kind of carried me through it, really.
Absolutely. And that forward focus and the goals and the positivity, and that's really, that's your lovely coping mechanism, which works.
Well, it does up to a point. I mean, I imagine that there are, at some point, you also need to say there is actually a problem here. You might not get better. I had to write letters to family if I didn't come around from the surgery. You know, that was tough, actually. Thinking, you know, Rose, who was 5 at the time, what's it gonna be like for her if I don't come back? But I've never opened them. They're in a box somewhere.
Wow. We did I talk about the living and dying program that I went on, and you know, you've experienced that, but it was like actually, in order to live our best life, to really think about our own death and what would that be like, and also preparing for that, because it will happen. And there's a lovely, and I suppose when you're so close to it, it's more frightening, but it's also, I know,
I thought about it, because we were talking the other day, and the question was asked, why haven't you read the letters, or why haven't you shown us the letters? And I thought, because I got better, I beat it. I beat the illness, and opening the letter is going to take me back to that place, and I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready to go back there yet. I've outrun it. I've done a Teddy Roosevelt. I've outrun the heart disease. But you know, I'm not. I don't think I'm ready to do that. I think I will do one day.
Yeah, you might, or you might not, isn't it? And just I
thought about burning. I thought about at least acknowledging that time. I thought about burning them, but it's unfinished business, I think.
Oh, that's nice that you've thought about that in terms of the ceremonial closing of that. That's, you know, and I really believe in ceremonies. I'm more and more in terms of our self-generated ceremonies. When we don't have those, when we haven't been able to do a year of public or societal ceremonies, you know, that's even become more and more important to me.
It is, isn't it? It's marking somebody's time, or marking something of significance. I remember we were lucky, we went to work with Impact in the States, and lived in California for a couple of years, which is another of my sort of pivotal moments in my life in connection with nature, because we were quite close to Monterey Bay, where which has had an incredible resurgence of marine wildlife in the last 10 years.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps.
Just amazing. Humpback whales, sea otters, pelicans, sea lions, great white sharks, you name it, they were all there. And you could go kayaking with them. It was fabulous. But there's a beach runs all the way around the bay. It's about 40 miles. An incredibly spiritual place. And in one part of the beach, there was this wall. It was just the back wall of somebody's house, and it was a memorial wall. And to people who had a connection with this amazing location. And there were photographs, or there were sculptures, or there were poems. And you know, these people have all gone, you know, they're all dead and buried, but they're immortalized in this incredible landscape. I remember we used to run past. Yes, well, one of them was an outstretched hand. It was a bronze hand, and it was kind of rubbed to a high polish by people who would do a high five as they ran past this place. It was Karen who discovered it, and I thought there's something about, you know, what a wonderful thing to be sort of. Your life is somehow it's memorialized in this special place, even though you've gone. There's still a sense of you here, and I remember that was a great connection, you know. And when I do die eventually, it'd be fabulous to have some of my ashes scattered over there in that location, and somehow that will then give me this connection with the place in the afterlife. And there's a few other places I've got on my list that I would. It would be a ball ache for whoever has to go and do it, but
exactly. Bloody hell! It's not even on the map.
Yes. but just having that sense of connection, yeah, would be
Yes.
really good.
Yeah. And I do think it's a lovely thing to think about. I'm really into sort of in terms of, being what are we about a good ancestor, or thinking about our ancestors and thinking about legacy. And I think it's lovely. And also, what is it? How do we want to commemorate or celebrate, or wow. And I know, oh goodness, I feel, that's, life's big.
Yeah, very much.
And I know that in terms of your lifeline, I'm sort of wanting to peer over if you've got a picture of it, but
yeah, it's all here.
have you? Oh, look at that.
So I'll send you a photo.
Oh, do please.
Yes, it's probably hard to read, but I was thinking about this. I mean, it's a bit like trying to print a hard copy of the internet. I was trying to download my brain onto paper, thinking, God, I've been really lucky. I've done some amazing things. And there's been a theme though. There's always been a theme around nature, around trees. When we lived in the States, I got involved with the Mountain Parks Foundation, brilliant non-profit near Santa Cruz, funding environmental education for people in the redwood forests. And of course, that whole area has burned over in the last year. So the park that we used to support was quite severely damaged, and it hasn't burned to that extent for several hundred years. But of course, it's all the human lens we're looking through. All that's gone are all the buildings. The trees are still there. The trees don't care. They'll regrow, So there's been a theme around trees and forests. Cumbria woodlands in the UK, of course. Love old forests, love ancient woodlands. Spent time in your part of the world, New Zealand, with Operation Raleigh in the mid 80s as well, down in Fiordland in the bush.
Yeah, and I love you can do a good mean Kiwi accent too, can't you?
Oh, I can do a terrible Kiwi accent, but learn how to swear in Kiwi, which is just fabulous.
But I love that you've been looking after Fiordland. It's such a precious place in terms of far, goodness of you.
Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it? And that was probably the closest I've been to somewhere that felt truly untracked, because we were in the middle of Fiordland. There were no paths, so it was a wild place. But even there, there's introduced species. Problems with non-native.
Sorry, I'm interrupting, but I'm just going to Fiordland because when I was growing up in Riversdale, and I think it was 1977, I think, and there was a family, there's a priest, Trevor, Trevor Collins. Oh my goodness. So his wife worked with my dad in the veterinary, and I used to stay with them. And anyway, there was the priest, Trevor, two others, and they went on a helicopter mission to Fiordland, and they crashed, and they've never been found. It's so wild, and never been found.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a very wild part of the world, isn't it? And so there's been that theme, Greenland, wild place, California, big trees, the Lake District, ancient woodlands. I do. It is an important part of my life. I think a little lockdown project was I've got a miniature forest growing in the garden. Come autumn time, I'm out there collecting seeds from unusual trees. Do you remember behind Merewood Hotel there was this amazing sweet chestnut that had been coppiced about 500 years ago, and it looks like an explosion coming out of the ground with these. Anyway, I've gathered some nuts from there last year, and I've grown some saplings. And for me, I look at this little sapling, which is about the size of my pen, thinking, your parent is about 800 years old. and it's just remarkable.
But this is what we need to do. That is a beautiful, that real connection and lovely.
So, but I want to go and plant them, in places that matter to me, around the park if I can. And I think, well, it was Roger Deakin, the nature writer. I think I mentioned him a bit earlier. I discovered his writing fairly recently, and it kind of, it really hooked me when I got into some of the stuff that he used to write about. He's an acute observer of the day-to-day in nature, and also what it means as well. You can do both ends of the spectrum. He can be incredibly intense about, describing a small incident at this amazing place he lived, Walnut Tree Farm, and then make some bigger connection with the wider world, with global issues and the nature of the universe. But there was a book. He went to Kazakhstan looking for the ancestors of apples, because they came from the Tian Shan Mountains. Apples originally, anyway. And walnuts as well, apples and walnuts. And he wrote this thing, and I've always carried it with me. There's this quote. He said, "To work for nature is a noble endeavour that knows no boundaries, nor should it, for it is our common purpose to work for the ecology of the world." I just love that. And I don't work in nature, but I'd like to think that what I do is about, at least in a small part, doing something for, or to support nature, or to enable nature. Nature doesn't need us, but it's about making all the things that matter to me possible, or a bit better as a result of what I've done.
Yes. And this is the whole regenerative, isn't it? Making even more life enhancing and doing your part in it.
Yeah.
So much love in that.
I think so.
Beautiful. And are you right? Because we actually didn't mention about journalism, but have you ever thought about writing? Because you do that. You do, in terms of your detail, your lovely, sense of history and the presence, and also the global issues. Have you ever thought about it?
It's a good question. I mean, I was a journalist briefly. It wasn't the major part of my career back in the 80s, and left it all behind. But more recently, I've found myself wanting to, write a blog piece. I'm doing a piece for another agency at the moment, or I think with the RGS, I've indulged my broadcast journalist fantasies. So I interview people like you're doing to me, and as part of our events. And I do like kind of capturing the spirit of something and articulating it in a way that makes sense, but also it's got to be good enough as well. I mean, I'm quite critical of the stuff that I write. That's probably why I don't do it very often. I think because you write really well, and I'm a big admirer of our friend Andy Dixon, who has a phenomenal ability to capture the spirit of something in the moment and share it. And I think that's the key. And we can all write, but can you write it in a way that people want to read about it, or that's going to inspire them? Roger Deakin does that well. Isabella Tree, who wrote Rewilding, she does that well. Georges Monbiot, another influence. I think there's something about capturing the sense of place, what it means for people, what it means for everything else, for nature, and being able to talk about that. And maybe I think I will do more of it.
You do, because the fact that you've identified it and you have identified all those, it means that you can do it. It's in with you. And my experience of you is that you absolutely do that. Oh, yay. Okay. We're waiting for the book. Good. All right.
No pressure then.
What your goal is? What is 2021's goal? Big goal.
2021 is getting through it. I mean, it's like 2020, isn't it? That's the year we never want to see again. But actually, I mean, it's not all bad, is it? It's not all bad. I mean, I've learned to love the lakes again, which had become rather familiar, as I was off traveling with work. But just getting out and connecting has been fantastic, and I want to do more of that locally in 2021.
You're seeing it with new eyes, isn't it? It's like it's a lovely coming home to see it with new eyes. I mean, he said that, didn't he?
I want to do more of that. Keep talking about taking my daughter up Helvellyn. We've never done it. I want to do that before she goes off to college. We will finally get some time away, have a holiday. So we're going to go to northwest Scotland with our camper van, which has been another lockdown project. So there are some upsides, to the otherwise fairly crappy state of the world and how this has been for everybody. But so I've got a few things on the list. haven't quite nailed the big outdoor challenge this year. Last year I went ski touring in Iceland, which with some friends, and that was amazing, amazing. And came back to a country going into lockdown.
That's right. I remember Karen writing, because we've been working together at that time, and she said, I want to get Jonathan home. It was a moment where you thought that actually you might not be before.
Well, we thought we might be stuck in Iceland for the duration because the air corridors were shutting. But it ticked all of my boxes. I'm not sure it ticked everybody else's. It was remote. It was 6 hours along a snowy road from Reykjavik in the north, in this amazing range of mountains with just the best snow. And we felt kind of removed from COVID. What's COVID? It's thousands of miles away. But of course it wasn't. It was in the next town. So anyway, we managed to get back. I think a family trip and an adventure trip. Maybe I could combine the two.
Exactly. And before, I suppose a remaining question is, what do you think about sort of the collective, conversation we need to step into around our beautiful connection with ourselves and the world? Is there a good view on that?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of talk about the climate crisis, the climate emergency, and the work that we do in our field, working with leaders in organisations, whether we should be doing more about that. And I've struggled with this because the notion of, if you're working in people development, you have to have an ecological angle. You have to be going in and coaching busy executives in organisations who do a lot of damage to re-engineer their business model or to do different kinds of work, and to be able to do that with credibility and create a business case. And in fact, that's a bit arrogant, because I don't know enough about reconfiguring an organization to make it carbon compliant or future-proofing a dirty sector into something that might be more about renewables. You talked to JC yesterday, coming from in the chemical industry sector, re-engineering a business to sustainable products. That's not what I do, but I can bloody well have good conversations with people who are leading that to help them do that in a better way that keeps people on board, that connects people with the why we're doing this, that allows them to be more emotionally intelligent, connected with people, realizing that it's not about them, it's about us. That's my contribution. And I think the conversation about the global emergency, which is the thing we should all be have in view on our radar, shouldn't we? We've got it. It's coming. It's here. Is whatever I do, I'd like to think it's in service of people being better, those people who are at the sharper end of it than me, better able to deal with the challenge. If we could bring the same kind of drive, pace, discipline that's been brought to the vaccination rollout, we could bring that to tackling the climate emergency.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? I'm not sure if I've answered your question. Whatever I do, I'd like to think it's in service of people who are leading that. And I'm doing my bit in my personal life to sort of raise awareness, to connect people with their day-to-day and the global reality. So
because you're doing in your personal life, you're raising awareness, but also in your professional life, you're raising awareness, because I think that's what we can do as leadership facilitators and consultants and coaches. It's not about the other person's got the answers, but it's actually helping them to see, to have that space to think about more strategic, to see that line of sight, to think about in service of life. That's the reflective questions, isn't it?
Exactly. I think we're not brought in for our content expertise, and deliberately so. I think that your skill and my skill is asking deliberately naive questions, because someone needs to bloody well ask them. And to get people to stopping people in their tracks and said, have you just heard what you said? Did you hear the words? So what's that mean? And what are you going to do about it? And I think that's our contribution, maybe, is, well, I said it before, helping people get out of their own way.
Mm. Yes, and you do that well.
There's something about, we have seen a bit, and I'm starting to realize I have seen a bit of stuff in my time. I do know some home truths about people and organizations. And, I have seen a history repeating itself, and maybe that's the time of life. Or maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis, to reflect on all the things that could have been.
Oh, but I think that's healthy. That's sort of lovely. And I just love that you've even put your lifelines just on for this conversation.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I hope how does it feel having done it?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I was a bit daunted, actually. I thought there's some illustrious people have been through your podcast here, and you've picked me, but I've really enjoyed it. And it has reminded me of the journey, I guess. It was never a very deliberate one. I think I've wandered through a range of experiences, and there was no sort of route from one to the other. And I quite like that, actually, because I would never have ended up in California if I'd joined an organisation, got a corporate job. I would never become chair of Cumbria Woodlands. I would never be, I had that time in the Karakoram. I wouldn't be doing what I do now, working for myself, doing really cool stuff. I wouldn't be married, wouldn't have a daughter that we have if I hadn't done all these things. So it's all kind of led to this point, really.
Yeah, so lovely recognition. And literally following your heart. Your intuition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll put a pause here and see you back for the next Earth Converse podcast. In the meantime, go and enjoy Earth, one conversation at a time.